Let's talk about that. Welcome to the conversation where we will highlight several different ministries and various topics of things, well, that we just want to talk about. Sit back, relax, and join in the conversation.
Hello, Newburgh Church. We want to welcome you back once again to our Friday series, Let's Talk About That. And today I am pleased to be joined with the Reverend Jonathan Combs. John is a pastor serving currently at Garden City United Methodist and also serving at Brightmoor campus of in Detroit, and that's part of the Redford Aldersgate United Methodist Church campus for the time being, and is also the founding pastor of Graceful Journey Church. And so we're glad to have him here. So, John, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Good. So we're glad that you're with us here today. And we wanted to talk a little bit more about Graceful Journey Church in particular. This is a new venture that is taking place here. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Graceful Journey Church and what it's about and how it got started?
Sure. Graceful Journey Community Church, it is a venture of the United Methodist Church. It's the idea or the vision started like 3 years ago. I had a friend, Reverend Rodney Gasaway, come in.
Yep. Which we know well, yes. Yeah. Newburgh. Yep.
Right. Come to talk to me about a new ministry that will encompass families with disabilities, autism, sensory issue disabilities, or different abilities, like we like to say, different abilities. Mm-hmm. He came and he looked at our building and said, you're in the right location in Garden City to have this type of ministry. And so we did a little research, or he did some research, and then I did some research and found out that there were two schools that dealt with children with these types of different abilities called Berger 1 and Berger 2, located in Garden City. And the fact of the matter is families from outside and inside of Michigan moved down to Garden City so that they can have their children or to go to these two schools. One is a preschool, and the other one is actually a graduate school where these wonderful children will graduate one day from the school. And so we did a research, and we found out that there were no places of worship where the families could go. There were churches and different churches, Methodist churches, Presbyterian churches, Baptist churches, but they had limited abilities to really reach out to families that are dealing with these types of issues. And so we thought that we'd look at our building and find and see if we can accommodate a ministry for these families. And so we looked at our building. Our building downstairs basement wasn't conducive enough to, didn't have bathrooms that are capable or handicap accessible. And so we looked at the Maplewood Center that was right across the street from the church, a little ways down, about an eighth of a mile down, and found out that they could house us, and they had bathrooms on the first floor, and they could accommodate us. So we started to do our research a little bit more. So we went down to Ohio to Faith United Methodist Church in Ohio to visit with that type of ministry, because they were doing that particular type of ministry, and they used some of the resources that we were thinking about looking at. And so we went down there for a weekend, a couple of volunteers that are really on the executive team for Graceful Journey. And we found that this ministry could be done with minimum change to a building. And we were really, really happy with that. And so we brung those types of ideas back up to Michigan and decided to gather all of our thoughts together and call on the United Methodist Church to help us and support us to launch this wonderful ministry. Of course, our day of launch was like right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
We could not launch, so we are looking at July or August to launch that particular type of church. But July we'll start our virtual church on Friday. On Saturdays from 10:30 to 11:30. So we will launch that virtually. Yeah, there you have it.
So that's great. It's amazing, and I know talking with Reverend Rodney Gassaway, who you mentioned, the idea has been going around for 3 years, and it's amazing to me how little opportunities there are for folks who have those type of needs for them to be able to attend church in the area. How have you guys addressed some of that?
Yeah, it was amazing when we first rolled out this idea. I met with a pastor who, and I won't mention their name, but I met with a pastor who said that, we had a family that had a child that, spoke out when a particular song came on, and just overzealous, and soon that family was asked to leave the church. And right then my heart sunk, because we're supposed to be a church that have open hearts, open minds, open doors for all folks. And so we kind of we kind of rolled off of that idea to make sure that we could equip, or we could best handle families that are dealing with these issues. So one of the ways we did it is our executive team works on the Garden City school board and at Berger Baylor's school board, and they are experts at sensory issues and autism and things of that nature. And so they teamed up together. These 7 wonderful women teamed up together to make the executive team to help launch this virtue.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great stuff. And it's a great United Methodist ministry that we're able to fill a need here too. Now, one of the things you mentioned too is that when you start your virtual worship, and I believe also that when you are able to launch in person, you're going to be doing so on Saturdays.
Yes.
Now, what's the reasoning behind some of that there?
Well, we found out that Fridays, that was our first, we wanted to look at the Fridays first. But we had a couple of preview services, and we found out that parents work all day while kids are at Berger's. Then they would have to come home, and then they would have to gather the child up after a whole day of excitement. If you ever happen to go into Berger School, there is a lot of activities, there's a lot of learning, and so the child is really tired. And so to have them gear up and get ready for a 6 p.m. worship on Friday night, the child is exhausted, the parent is exhausted. And so, we did try a couple of those services, and the parents and the community came to us and say, you know what? A Saturday morning worship would work best for us because we would be refreshed, ready to go. Our child could come up and get into a routine, and we think that would be best. They would be wide awake and ready for a new adventure on Saturday morning. And so we catered to those, that type of vision. And so now we are going to be open on Saturdays from 10:30 to 11:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's great. So if someone is a part of another congregation that they're very involved with it as well, would that also give them the opportunity to help and participate in what Graceful Journey is doing?
Absolutely, absolutely. The more the merrier. the more families that we get in, that we can address the issue of a lack of worship in the families' lives. That is our purpose. That is our mission. We want to bring the church to a forgotten community, and it's important that we reach out and we do that. And it doesn't matter if you go to this church or that church. Mornings at 10:30, we have experts that are there that can handle a child if a child goes through an episode. We have a quiet room, we have a sensory room, we have certified teachers, counselors. Everybody on this executive board is hands-on and are certified to help out and then we have a excellent worship experience, and that's what some parents are missing, because they can't go so much to a church and, with their child because of either the meltdown issues or because of too many wiggles or too many sounds, and they don't feel comfortable. I can remember a person that we met at Berger Baylor, who she was an African American woman, and she was bringing her nephew every day to the school. And we met her at a family meeting. They call them family meetings. And she said, I go to my own church and I take my nephew, and this is the church that I love so much. But I feel that a lot of folks are looking at me strange when my nephew makes too much noise or wiggles a different way. And so I really don't feel comfortable in my own church. This is the issues that we are confronted with when we talk to the community and the parents, and we want to make everyone welcome when they come to Graceful Journey.
Oh, that's great. And that's one of the things that I think is important. While it's a United Methodist sponsored ministry, the emphasis on community is so important there. So
yes.
We're glad that you're able to take on that venture, and then as you go to the virtual world, like all of us have been doing right now in July for your virtual launch, and then hopefully looking forward to in-person worship there as well. So that's Graceful Journey Community Church.
Yes.
Saturdays, 10:30, starting on
Yes.
July, what day would that be?
July, I believe it's not going to be the 4th, so
July
17th.
There you go. So that's
July
great.
17th.
We look forward to
Yes.
that. Well, the other thing that we wanted to talk about, John, is obviously the turmoil that is happening in our world right now, especially with the death of George Floyd and what the response has been. And we've seen responses from peaceful protests that have turned violent. We've seen our politicians weigh in, and it's weighing in on us as pastors too. So what's been your initial response to not only what happened with the police in Minneapolis there with George, but also the subsequent results of that?
Well, there's a quote by Benjamin Franklin: "Justice will not be served until those who are affected are as outraged as those who are." And so my thoughts on this whole issue is it's more than George Floyd. It's more than Trayvon Martin. It's more than Breonna Taylor. It goes deeper. It goes deeper than that. And to have the conversation about race and religion, rather, we need to really be open, because once we open that book, it's going to affect everyone different. It's going to affect me different. It's going to affect everyone different once we open up that book, because there's some realities in this conversation that is shocking to the world. And so I think justice should be served. And On this issue, justice is not served until all these officers are charged, and goes through the process. I also think that in terms of us clergy and the United Methodist Church and our commitment to order the life of the church in our community, we have to speak up and we have to march together, but we need to do it peacefully, and we need to do it with a purpose behind it. There must be a purpose behind it. I can remember marching in the Trayvon Martin march in Detroit when they brung that march to Detroit, and I marched with Pastor Ed Rowe and John Conyers, and I was talking to John Conyers at the time, and he said, "This is all fine and well, but there must be a purpose at the end of your march. Laws must change. Things must be put in place so that there is true equality. All systemic ways that are unjust for African American communities or people of color, brown skin communities, must cease. But in order to do that, there must be a realization that these things exist. These things exist. I'll give you an example real quick. I coach basketball. Well, I used to coach basketball because my son, I used to play basketball in high school, and my son, I raised up my son, and he's a basketball player, and he loves to play basketball. And in junior high school, he was a great basketball player because his dad taught him how to play basketball.
Yeah.
And we moved out to Macomb County, and he went to the junior high school. He became a great basketball player. His grades were good. His last year in junior high school, he didn't even have to try out for the basketball team. Him and another guy who recruited everybody else for the basketball team, and the high school could not wait for John Combs to come to the high school. I won't mention the high school, but anyway,
yeah.
His high school, he went to high school his first year, straight to the basketball team, grades, good kid, ready to play. He played in his junior year, and then they pulled him up from sophomore. They pulled him up to play varsity. Never played one game in varsity. Grades good. The kid was really, really energetic. Came to practice. I brought him to practice. I worked with him on the basketball court. He was 6'4" as I am. He was a good player. The coach never put him in. Talented player, sat on the back of the bench. So during the third or fourth game, I went to my son. I says, "Hey, listen, why aren't you playing?" He says, "Dad, I don't know." He says, "I come to practice, I participate, I have a good rapport with everyone. The coach, I don't know why he's not putting me in." I says, "Well, I'm going to talk to the coach." He says, "No, Dad, don't talk to the coach. I got it." So he didn't play for the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh game, and they lost every game that year, every single game. One of the players got injured. Another player got kicked off the team. And one particular time, they asked him to play. They called him. They called his number. He came in, scored 26 points, and they won the only game they won that year. The following year, the coach left and went to Country Day. Sorry, I mentioned the name, but the coach left, and they played Jonathan from the first day on, and they went to the championship. He came to me. He says, "Dad, I think that I have been a product of racism, and here's why. I was the only black kid on the bench, and I was the largest, and I don't know why the coach did not play me." And from that point on, I had to explain to my child that there are some systems out there that are put in place from people that are not kind to African American, especially to African American boys. And you're going to have to work through the issues, and you're just going to have to pray, and you're going to have to do the best that you can. That was the hardest conversation I ever had to have with him. And that's not a good conversation to have with a young man who wants to go to college, who wants to do the best and give back, who works in the church, does the sound and video in the church, and who prays and does the things that he needs to do. So this incident kind of hit home with me more than anything, to have my child be a victim to this situation.
Yeah, that's a great personal story, but it just shows how ingrained, excuse me, it still is in our world, and obstacles that have to be overcome. Hearing you talk and sharing those stories, and what I've been coming back to is Dr. King's 1967 speech on the other America, and the segment where he's talking about riots, and he says, and I'm picking a few sentences from it there, and he says, certain conditions continue to exist in our society which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard.
Yes.
And he goes on to talk about what we as America back in 1967, and it's amazing how much of this still rings true today. Yes. And what we have not heard, and the story there about your son, I think drives that home. And then Dr. King says, so in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. And concludes that section by saying, social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention. Yeah. And to me, that just hits home around how much work we still have to do around social justice, because we could pick this part of Dr. King's speech up and we could put it here into 2020. And it seems like it could apply still today.
It's relevant. It really is relevant. The voice of the unheard. And a lot of folks use that quote, and I've seen that quote on Facebook. A lot of folks use that quote, and one person used that quote to say, well, we must riot. And that was taken out of context. Dr. King wasn't saying that we must riot and destroy our own communities. Dr. King was saying that what is happening before you, what you are seeing on TV, is the results of people who haven't been heard in the past, who haven't been heard in the 60s, who haven't been heard in the Korean War, who haven't been heard in the march in Montgomery, who haven't been heard. And so they've taken that out of context a little bit. He's not condoning that. He's saying this is what you are seeing. There are ways, I believe, and I believe that Dr. King believed, that we can move towards equality, to be equal in the United States. And I still believe that there are ways. I'll give you another story. I use my son a lot, right? So Jonathan got a text the other day, 2 days ago, from his friend who went on to go to University of Michigan. And the text says, Jonathan, I haven't talked to you in a couple of years. We were all basketball stars together or playing partners together. He says, I've witnessed and watched what's going on, and this is a white guy, right? This is a white guy. he called John, he texted Jonathan and says, I want to check on you and make sure that you are all right. I love you, and if you need anything, I'm there for you. And we are in this thing together. You have been on my heart. My eyes are watering from what I see on TV and what's happening in the Black community. And when I get home this season, I'm going to come and we're gonna hang out. He shot this text to me to say, this is how my friends, this is how my community has reached out to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying that there is hope. There's hope streaming from the church. There's hope streaming from this new generation who seems to be together, Black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter. There is hope. What we have to do is we have to make I think personally, we have to make a stand and help put people in office who supports our agenda to be one people, right? And we have to support those types of folks and make those types of laws that will protect us, and not just let someone join the police department, pass the test and pass the physical, and you're on. They must be vetted also. But that story of Jonathan and his friend gave me hope that there is a possibility that we can get through this thing only together, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got to do it together, and just even take those little steps of reaching out to let people know that we hear them, and yes, and we're together. You talk about your kids. There's two things I've been thankful for that I've been reflecting on. Is one is that where I serve here at Newburgh, we're a congregation that has been traditionally a white suburban congregation, and we're continuing to see as our demographics in the area not only grow and change, but also folks who are coming there. And maybe you're seeing a lot of that in Garden City too, where we're becoming much more racially and ethnically diverse and breaking down some of those barriers. And talking about your own kids, my youngest, my daughter, who is turning 13 next month, but in the neighborhood here, her best friend is African American, and then Indian, not Native American, but Indian, right, as well here in the neighborhood. And they have grown up not thinking anything of it, which is something that even my generation, our generation, right, had impressed upon us. So that's where I have some hope too. That we're all, we all can be in this together going forward, and prayerfully we continue to do our work so that that voice can be heard.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's going to open up some eyes. It's going to some tears are going to flow because because of the stories that haven't been heard. But I think that we are headed in the right direction. This last 2 or 3 years, I have known you to be a friend, and I know we haven't had our coffee like we said that we were going to have.
And just when we got it scheduled, then this pandemic hit.
Like, we might have to have virtual coffee. But I feel that that when we open up and we have that dialogue and we have that truthfulness, and we have that moment that will say, wow, all this time I didn't know, or these things are really happening today, so that when we open up our eyes, we will know best how to handle some certain situations and have the conversation outside of us being together, maybe with someone else. No, that isn't the way that goes, or you have it all wrong there. And so we have to continue to have a friendship, that's what will turn the tables on a society that seems to have a lean toward racism. That's what will change between society.
That's great. I think that's a good point for us to leave that on here too, as we continue all that going forward. So I want to say a word of thanks to you, Pastor Jonathan Combs, for joining us today for our Let's Talk About That. And we're glad to have your thoughts and perspectives, and thankful for your leadership of Graceful Journey Community Church, and for your leadership as we in the church as we continue to move forward and tackle these issues of race that are with us in our society, but pushing forward with hope. So, Newberg, we hope that you have enjoyed this time today, and we look forward to you coming back and joining us next week for our next installment of Let's Talk About That. Until then, have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the virtual world once again online for our time of worship. Take care and have a blessed week.